A good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Erev Shabbos. Parshas Mishpatim. Erev Shabbos. Aleph. Rosh Chodesh. Adar Rishon. You know, it's an incredible thing in last week's Parsha, when we talked about the giving of the Torah. The rest of the story of the giving of the Torah, Maimon Har Sinai, is in this week's Parsha. Last week's Parsha, I'm sure many teachers taught their students about Nasev Nishma, when in fact it wasn't part of the story last week, it's part of this week's story. The question is whether this happened after, before. It doesn't really make a difference. At the end of the day, the Torah tells us in this week's Parsha that Vayal Moshe v'Aaron Nadav Avihu v'Shivim Miziknei Yisrael, that Moshe, Aaron, Nadav Avihu, the whole crowd went up the mountain. Vayiru, and they saw Elokei Yisrael, they saw God. And they were given a vision, mamash, a vision of God. And then it says, V'tachas Raglov, and under his feet was Kemas, and look at this, is Sapphire. It was like a stone. It was a stone made of sapphire, like a brick. And it lit everything up. You can only imagine what the image was, that they got there and they saw Kadosh Baruch Hu, and then they saw under his feet there was this brick. And this brick of sapphire that was illuminating. It was an incredible sight. And you have to wonder of all the things that they could have seen there, and all the things that were there, and all of the different pieces of what goes on in Shemayim. This is what the Torah tells us. This is what made the greatest impression. This was an incredible thing. And Rashi explains that this brick was really representative of all the bricks that they had to build in Mitzrayim. That they had to get the straw and they had to get the mortar, put the whole thing together, and they had to make bricks. And it was a terrible experience. And it caused a tremendous amount of pain to the Jewish people. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu took one of these bricks and he put it under his feet to constantly remember the pain the Jewish people were undergoing. And when we saw it, it made such an incredible impression. Moshe, Aaron, who were carrying the Jewish people on their shoulders. The Shivim Zkenim, the 70 elders, who were the ones that made sure that they would take the beating for the Jewish people when they weren't able to meet their quotas. And their suffering was immense and intense. And then we got up there, and then they saw that brick. And they realized that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had taken it on himself. And had taken that brick as a reminder. That I'm with you with your suffering. And I didn't do anything necessarily to alleviate it, but I'm here. I'm suffering along with you. I'm feeling for you. I'm carrying your burden. I'm recognizing. I'm just waiting for you. Waiting for you, my people, for that moment that I can bring you close to me, give you my Torah. But you know, it was a sapphire brick. Suffering in Mitzrayim wasn't pretty. The pain that we went through wasn't pretty. So why was it a sapphire brick? Livnas HaSapphire. Something that was attractive and beautiful. So I'll tell you an amazing thing. The Chizkuni, one of the commentaries, says that we know that we suffered in Mitzrayim blood, sweat, and tears. Literally blood, sweat, and tears. That when we got caught, we would bleed into the bricks. The Medrash tells over of a story of a woman who miscarried into the bricks. And the angel Michael gathered up that miscarried child. The mother miscarried because of all the pain that she was watching and she was experiencing. And the angel Michael took that brick and took with that baby and brought it up to Shemayim. And that became the brick says the Chizkuni, that God put under his feet to keep as a reminder of the pain the Jewish people were undergoing. Says the Chizkuni, that's what it means, livness as Sapphire. Don't read it Sapphire, don't read it as Sapphire, but read it as livness as Shapir, Shvir, the placenta. It was the brick that was made of that miscarried child, of that fetus. A brick that was made from the very suffering of the Jewish people. But maybe there's no difference between Rashi's understanding and the Chizkuni's understanding. Because the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu felt for us, and the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put a brick under his feet that he should never forget the pain that we're going through. And when he looked at us and he said that in all your pain and all your suffering, look what you're accomplishing for the world. Look what you're accomplishing for yourselves. Look how you're preparing yourselves, how you're growing, how you're becoming this incredible nation. All that pain and suffering had a certain beauty to it, had a certain illumination. It was a livnas hashafir and a livnas hasapir at the same time. Because it wasn't just suffering. It was cleansing, it was uplifting, it was moving us and shaping us as a people. And what seemed to be something that had no purpose was in fact incredibly purposeful. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu put it right near himself. So that when we would see it, we would recognize how much he valued and appreciated and respected what we were going through. You know, it's an amazing thing. WhatsApp decided this week a new definition of what's useful, what's purposeful. WhatsApp sent a message to all of the Chatufim, all the kidnap victims and their families, and all those that were killed on Simchas Torah, that hadn't touched their phones in 4 months, that hadn't pressed the button, that hadn't sent a message or watched the video, that their accounts were closed, that they in essence had left the group because they hadn't done anything useful with their account. And it struck me that this is what a definition of useful is. The ability to be able to press a button, the ability to be able to use a phone. We know a very different definition of useful. About 20 years ago, there was a lady by the name of Terry Shivo who suffered a sickness and became essentially brain dead. And she was being kept alive by life support. And there was a battle in her family. Some of the family wanted to take her off life support. Some of the family wanted to leave her on life support. And that battle was brought to the courts. That battle was brought to America. Newsweek, Time magazine, every television channel. Everybody was talking about Terry Shivo. And everybody was talking about end-of-life issues. Everybody was talking about the value of life. Everybody was talking about what they want in their lives. And for 2 weeks, the level of conversation in the United States of America and around the world was so filled with tachlis and so filled with purpose. And here was this lady who was lying in a persistent vegetative state, who people would have said her life is useless, and her life was so impactful and so purposeful. And in those last days of her life, she accomplished more than people who live to 90, 100 can accomplish. The rest of her life was nondescript. But in those last 2 weeks, she couldn't speak, she couldn't hear. She was essentially brain dead, but she was very, very much alive. Because being alive means having an effect. Being alive means having a purpose. Being alive doesn't mean dancing a jig. Being alive doesn't mean playing poker. Being alive means living with a purpose and accomplishing something with your existence. You know, the Torah tells us the Ma'aris HaGedolim, the big orbs, and it describes the sun, it describes the moon. The more Agadol, the more Katan, the Esakochavim, and the stars. So one has to wonder that why, when it's talking about the Ma'oros, the orbs, the sun and the moon, it calls them big. And when it talks about the stars, it says, Esakochavim, the stars. As if they're an afterthought. Yeah, stars. Stars, they light up more than, they light up like the sun. They can light up galaxies. It's incredible what they can do, Why are they called just V'yasek? Because I think the Torah is telling us something amazing. That God knows greatness. Being a Gadol is defined by the effect that you have on other people. It's not defined by your size or by what you do, but it's defined on the effect that you have on others. The sun and the moon were Ma'aros HaGedolim, those were big, huge, massive, because they have such an incredible impact on us. The stars attack of V'yasek, because their level of impact is not nearly as great as the sun and the moon. That's what's called impactful. Those chatufim that haven't touched their phones in 4 months, those who were killed in Simchas Torah that haven't touched their phones, haven't sent a message, haven't watched a movie, and according to WhatsApp, are useless. What they've accomplished in the past 4 months is incredible. They've taught us to pray. They've taught us to hope. They've taught us to be sensitive. They've taught us to love. They've taught us to reach out to others. They've taught us to tear down some of the walls. They've been accomplishing something every single day for the past 4 months. These are the livnas hasapir. These are the bricks that are sitting under God's feet. These are the bricks that we look at and that we're reminded what's really meaningful. It's doing something with your life, having a meaning and a purpose for others. And all of these people's lives are so meaningful because they're impacting other people in such an incredible way. And as ugly as it is, what's going on, the light that it's shedding on Klal Yisrael, the light that it's shedding on the Jewish people, and ultimately the light that it's going to shed on the world, no matter how much the world tries to ignore it, is an incredible thing. That's not useless. That's not purposeless. That's as close to God as you can get. And the God looks at that and he says, Ima Anochi B'tzara, I'm with you with this pain. I'm carrying this also. I'm feeling this too. And I know that in the end, when there's a Geula, in the end, when there's a redemption, in the end, when all of this yields the fruit that is meant to yield, we're going to recognize that it's not just Livnas HaShapir, It's not just these bricks that are made of pain, but these bricks made of pain are going to be livness as Sapphire. They're going to be these gorgeous, beautiful things. These things that were built from meaning and purpose. These things that remind us to live our lives and be useful, be purposeful, impact other people. And the more you impact other people, the bigger we become, the more light we bring into this world, and the easier it will be for us to recognize and appreciate when the ultimate light shines, the moment of the Geula Shlema, which should come to us b'meira v'yameinu. Amen. Have a beautiful Shabbos, everyone.